I still remember the exact moment my stomach dropped, like I missed a step on the stairs. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that tells you your whole life just cracked open, and you didn't even hear it break. I was standing near Gate 32 at JFK Airport, pretending not to be annoyed, pretending not to care, pretending this was just another day of being the kid who stayed behind, while everyone else went somewhere better. I had my backpack slung over one shoulder and my phone in my hand, scrolling through nothing, just killing time before my bus ride back home. And that's when I saw them. At first my brain didn't even register it. Because why would it? Why would I ever expect to see my own parents right there, walking past me, laughing, relaxed, holding matching carry-ons that definitely did not come from a clearance rack? My mom's hair was done. Not her lazy Sunday bun. Not her tired workday ponytail, but styled soft curls, the kind she said took too much time and money. My dad was wearing that watch again, the one he said was broken, the one he stopped wearing the day he told me we were broke. And then I saw the sign above them, first class boarding. I swear my chest tightened so hard I forgot how to breathe. My ears started ringing, and for a second I honestly thought I was going to pass out right there between a Starbucks and a charging station, because just 2 weeks earlier, my mom sat at our kitchen table, hands folded, voice shaking, telling me there was no money, no vacation, no road trip, no weekend away, nothing. She said we were barely keeping the lights on. She said groceries were getting crazy. She said I needed to understand that life wasn't fair, and I believed her. I believed her when she said we couldn't afford to celebrate my graduation. I believed her when she said I should be grateful just to have a roof. I believed her when she said asking for more made me selfish. So why were they boarding first class? I stood there frozen, watching them scan their tickets. Watching the flight attendant smile at them like they mattered, like they belonged there. My mom didn't see me, or maybe she did and chose not to. I don't know which one hurts more. All I know is that in that moment, something snapped inside me. Not loud, not violent, just a quiet shift. Like when you finally accept the truth you've been avoiding. I wasn't broke, I was lied to. My name is Maya. I'm 22, and until that day I thought my parents were just strict old school, a little controlling but still trying their best. I grew up hearing the same story over and over. We don't have money like that. We're not those people, we survive. We don't splurge, every birthday was small. Every Christmas had rules. Every request came with guilt attached. College was on me, my books were on me, my part-time jobs were on me. And every time I questioned it, every time I asked how we could be so broke but never behind on bills, my mom would give me that look, that disappointed sigh, like I should be ashamed for even asking. So I stopped asking. I became the low-maintenance daughter, the one who didn't complain, the one who said it's fine, the one who learned to swallow disappointment, like it was normal. I worked nights at a diner, went to classes, half asleep, counted every dollar, and all along, they were sitting in first class as I watched them disappear down that jet bridge. My hands started shaking, not from anger, yet from confusion. My brain was racing, trying to make excuses for them. Maybe it was work, maybe someone paid for it, maybe it was a one-time thing. But deep down, I knew my parents weren't bad with money, they were just bad with honesty. That bus ride home was the longest hour of my life. Every stop felt like torture. Every mile gave my thoughts more room to spiral. By the time I got off, I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. I was calm. And that scared me. Because calm meant I was done being confused. Calm meant I was about to start paying attention. Our house looked the same when I got back. Same faded couch. Same chipped counter. Same family photos on the wall. Photos from trips I wasn't allowed to remember, trips I was too young to go on, trips they took without me. I went to my room and sat on my bed, staring at the wall, thinking about every no, every lecture, every sacrifice they told me was necessary. And I started replaying moments I ignored before, the time my mom came home with a designer bag and said it was fake. The time my dad upgraded his car but said it was cheaper in the long run, the random weekends. They said they were visiting friends. I felt stupid, played like I had been living in a house with strangers who knew exactly what they were doing. But the worst part wasn't the money, it was the message. They didn't think I deserved the truth that night. My mom texted me just a simple, "Where are you?" like nothing happened. Like she didn't just walk past me in an airport pretending I didn't exist. I typed back at home and watched the 3 dots appear then disappear. She never asked how my day was. Never asked why I came back early, and that's when I realized they were counting on my silence. They thought I wouldn't say anything. They thought I'd doubt myself. They thought I'd stay small. They didn't know me anymore, because something had changed, and once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. I wasn't angry yet, that came later. Right now, I was focused. Focused on understanding the game they were playing. Focused on figuring out why. And most of all, focused on deciding what I was going to do next. Because I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to confront them right away. I wasn't going to cry or beg for answers. Nah. I was going to listen, watch, and learn. And if they really wanted to treat me like I didn't matter, if they really thought I was too naive to notice they were about to find out just how wrong they were. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mom's smile at the gate, that relaxed smile. The one she never wore at home. The one she never had for me. I stared at my ceiling, listening to the house breathe, the hum of the fridge, the tick of the hallway clock, my dad's low snore from their room. And I kept thinking how wild it was, how 2 people could sleep so peacefully while their lie sat heavy on my chest. By morning I made a decision, not a loud one, not a dramatic one, just a quiet promise to myself. I wasn't going to ask them anything. Not yet, because questions give liars room to twist. And I wanted the truth straight, no filter, no excuses. So I played normal. I came downstairs, poured coffee, sat at the table like always. My mom was already dressed too, dressed makeup on, nice sweater. She looked at me and smiled, that soft, fake, concerned smile. "There you are," she said. "You came back early." "Yeah," I said. Trying to keep my voice steady, couldn't sleep. She nodded like that explained everything. My dad didn't even look up from his phone. Just mumbled morning. And right there I noticed something else. His phone was new. The screen bigger, clean, no cracks. The old one had a busted corner for like 2 years. I felt my jaw tighten, but I swallowed it. "So how was your trip?" I asked casually, like I didn't already know. My mom froze for half a second, barely noticeable, but I saw it fine. She said, "Just tiring." "Where'd you guys go again?" I asked. She waved her hand. "Just visiting friends. Nothing special." "Nothing special." "First class. Nothing special." I nodded and took a sip of coffee that tasted like dirt. My heart was pounding, but my face stayed calm that morning. I left the house and didn't go to work. I went to the library, not to study, to dig. Because if there's one thing I learned growing up broke, it's how to stretch nothing into something. I logged into the family computer account, the one my mom never changed the password for, because she never thought I'd snoop. And there it was, right in the browser history: airline confirmations, hotel bookings, emails labeled "getaway." My hands shook as I clicked through, not fast, slow, like ripping off a bandage inch by inch. They weren't just traveling, they were living resorts, wine tasting, spa packages, and dates. So many dates. This wasn't new. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was a whole other life. I felt sick, like my childhood just replayed in my head, but different. Like a director's cut with scenes I was never meant to see. I pulled up bank statements, and that's when it really hit. They weren't broke, not even close. There was money moving around, savings accounts, investment apps, college fund transfers. But not for me, for something else. Something called future security. My name wasn't on it. I stared at the screen so long my eyes burned, because it wasn't just about trips anymore. It was about choices. They chose themselves every single time I thought about the nights I worked. Doubles, the loans I took out, the times my mom told me struggling builds character. Turns out it builds resentment too. When I got home that evening, they were both there laughing, watching TV. My mom asked if I wanted dinner, like nothing was wrong. I said I wasn't hungry, and that wasn't a lie. Hunger had shifted into something else, something heavier over the next few weeks. I paid attention. Really paid attention. I noticed the way packages showed up and disappeared into their room, the way my mom suddenly had new shoes, The way my dad stopped complaining about gas prices. And I noticed how careful they were with me, too careful, like they were hiding a mess behind a closed door. One night, I overheard them talking, low voices, kitchen lights off. "She doesn't need to know," my dad said. "Know what?" My mom whispered. "Everything," he replied. "She's fine, she's independent." My hands clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. Independent, like it was something I chose. Like it wasn't something they forced. That was the moment the sadness turned into clarity. They weren't protecting me. They were using me. My independence made their freedom easier, and once I understood that, the anger finally showed up, not explosive, not screaming, cold, controlled. I started saving screenshots, forwarding emails, documenting patterns. I built a timeline quietly, patiently, because revenge isn't loud when it's done right, it's surgical. I also started changing, not in ways they noticed. I stopped asking for help, stopped sharing plans, stopped trusting their advice. I smiled more, laughed at dinner, played my role, and they relaxed. They thought the lie worked, but something else was happening. I was learning how power works, how silence can be a weapon, how truth can ruin the people who hide from it. One afternoon, my mom asked if I was okay, said I seemed distant. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Yeah, just growing up." She smiled, proud. If she only knew, because I wasn't just growing up, I was waking up, and soon, very soon, they were going to have to face the daughter they underestimated. Once you stop seeing your parents as heroes, everything gets real clear real fast. I started noticing patterns, little habits, the kind you ignore when you're busy surviving. My mom always paid cash for small stuff, groceries, gas. But anything big, anything fun went straight on a card. My dad kept all the financial mail locked in his desk, said it was boring. Adult stuff, said I wouldn't understand. Turns out I understood just fine. I just wasn't invited. I also noticed how careful they were about appearances, always complaining about money in front of family, always playing humble, always acting like life was just barely holding together. But behind closed doors, they were comfortable. Not rich, but comfortable enough to lie about it. And the lies weren't random. They were strategic. I realized something else too. They didn't just hide money, they hid me. They never talked about my loans. Never mentioned how hard I worked. Never told anyone I was struggling, because that would make them look bad. I was the quiet success story. The proof they raised a strong daughter without spending a dime. And once that clicked, something else settled in. They weren't scared of being poor. They were scared of being exposed. That thought stuck with me, followed me everywhere, at work, on the bus, lying in bed at night. Exposed, I started wondering what would happen if people knew, not strangers but family, my aunt who always slipped me $20, my grandma who thought my parents were saints, my cousins who thought I was spoiled. What would they say if they knew the truth? I didn't rush it. I wasn't emotional anymore. I was patient. I kept collecting screenshots, bank statements, timestamps. I even kept a little notebook. Old school, because digital stuff can disappear. I wrote down dates, things they said, things they bought. It felt weird at first, like I was betraying them. Then I remembered they started it one night. My dad asked me about my student loans casually, like it was small talk. "You managing okay?" He said. I smiled. "Yeah." Figuring it out, he nodded. Good builds character, that word again, character. I wanted to laugh, wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded, because character was exactly what they lacked. A few days later, my mom asked me to help her set up. Her phone said it was acting weird. My heart started racing, but I kept my cool, sure. I said. She handed it to me without a second thought, unlocked, trusting. I scrolled through, pretending to fix settings, but my eyes were everywhere. Apps, banking, travel. There. It was a shared folder, photos. I almost dropped the phone. Beaches, rooftop dinners, spa robes, dates, matching every lie they ever told. She stood behind me, sipping coffee, completely unaware. I handed it back and said it should be fine. She smiled. "Thanks, honey." Honey, that night I cried, not loud, not dramatic, just tears sliding down my face in the dark, because no matter how angry I was, they were still my parents, and that made everything heavier. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Because once you see the truth, going back feels like betraying yourself. I started thinking about my graduation, coming up fast. They told me they couldn't help, said money was tight, said maybe we could do dinner at home. I nodded, said it was okay, but inside a plan was forming, nothing illegal, nothing crazy, just truth placed in the right moment. I knew one thing: they cared deeply about how they looked, how the family saw them, how their friends saw them. That was the soft spot. And soft spots are where real damage happens. I didn't want to ruin them, I just wanted balance. I wanted them to feel what I felt, the weight, the shame, the quiet realization that something precious was broken. A week before graduation, my mom mentioned inviting family over, just cake, nothing fancy. I smiled and said, sounds good, and that's when I knew that was the moment. Because they were walking straight into it, thinking they were in control. They had no idea their biggest lie was about to sit right there on the table, right next to the cake, and all I had to do was let it speak. The days leading up to graduation felt unreal, like I was walking around in someone else's life. My mom was suddenly extra nice, asking what color cake I wanted, telling people how proud she was. My dad even hugged me, a quick, awkward thing, like he wasn't used to it, and every time they smiled at me, every time they talked about sacrifice and hard work, my chest felt tight because the lie was sitting right there between us. Thick, heavy. They still thought I didn't know that confidence, that comfort. It pissed me off more than the lie itself. The night before graduation, I barely slept, not because I was nervous, but because my brain wouldn't stop running scenarios. What if I froze? What if I backed out? What if this blew up in my face? Then I remembered all the nights I cried alone, all the times I believed them, and I knew backing out would hurt worse. Graduation day came fast, sun too bright, air too warm. They sat in the crowd waving like proud parents, telling everyone around them how hard it was to raise a kid with no money. I smiled when I crossed the stage because the smile wasn't for them. It was for me that night. The house filled up, aunts, uncles, cousins, laughter, music, cake on the table. My mom floated around playing host. My dad talked about how proud he was. Someone asked where they were traveling next. My mom laughed and said, "Oh, we don't do trips, we can't afford all that." I felt my heart start pounding, but I stayed calm. After cake, after pictures. After everyone settled in, I stood up just for a second. I said, "I want to say something." The room quieted. My parents looked surprised but smiled. I talked about growing up, about struggle, about independence. Heads nodded. Then I said, "I used to think we were broke." Silence. But then I learned something not long ago. My mom's smile faded just a little. I said, "I learned that sometimes being broke isn't about money, it's about honesty." My dad shifted in his seat. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the TV photos, filled the screen. Beaches. First-class seats, spa. Robes. The room went dead quiet. I didn't raise my voice, didn't yell. I just said, "This is why I paid for college alone. This is why I worked nights, because I was told there was nothing." My mom stood up. "Maya, stop." I looked at her, and for the first time I wasn't scared. I said, "I just wanted the truth." No one spoke. My aunt gasped. My grandma stared. My dad looked like the ground disappeared. I turned off the screen and sat down. Nobody clapped, nobody yelled. But the silence said everything. That was the moment the power shifted. You could feel it. That thick, uncomfortable silence that sits in a room after the truth lands. Nobody knew where to look. Nobody knew what to say. My mom was standing there frozen, like someone hit pause on her. Her mouth slightly open, eyes darting around the room. My dad stayed seated, hands clenched, jaw tight, like if he moved even an inch, he might break. My grandma was the first to speak. Her voice soft but shaky. "What is this?" My mom finally snapped out of it. She rushed forward, grabbed the remote, turned the TV off. Like that would erase everything. "This is private," she said. "Maya." This is not the time. I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time I saw fear, not concern, not disappointment, fear. I stood up again, slow, calm. When would have been the right time? I asked when I was drowning in loans, when I was working nights, when I thought I was asking for too much just to exist. My dad finally spoke. "Lower your voice." That did it. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was insane. lower my voice after years of swallowing everything I said. You taught me to be quiet. You taught me to be grateful. You taught me to struggle in silence. My aunt shook her head. Is this true? My mom jumped in. It's not what it looks like, classic. It never is. I didn't argue. I didn't list receipts. I already showed enough. I just said I believed you. That's the part that hurts. People started whispering low, messy. Uncontrolled. My parents hated that they lived for control. My grandma stood up, slowly looked at my parents, then at me. Why didn't you help her? She asked, no anger, just disappointment. My mom's face crumbled. She tried to speak. Nothing came out. My dad finally stood up. This is family business. He said, we'll talk about it later. I nodded, sure, because later was finally my turn. People started leaving, not dramatic exits, just quiet ones. The house felt smaller with every goodbye. When the last guest left, the door clicked shut and the silence came back. My mom turned on me. How could you do this to us? To us, I said. How could you do this to me? She started crying, real tears, not the fake stuff. We did our best. She said we wanted you strong. I looked at her and said, strong doesn't mean alone. My dad rubbed his face. You embarrassed us. I said, you embarrassed yourselves. That hit harder than yelling ever could. They didn't scream after that. They didn't punish me. They didn't kick me out. They just looked small. For the first time, they didn't have answers. I went to my room, closed the door, and sat on my bed. My hands were shaking, my heart was racing. But under all that, there was relief. I finally said it that night. My mom knocked soft. Hesitant. Can we talk? She asked. I opened the door. She sat on the edge of my bed. Hands folded like before, but this time no power. We didn't think you'd understand. She said, I asked to understand what, that you'd resent us. I laughed quietly. Too late. She cried again, said they were scared, said money made them feel safe, said they thought keeping it from me was protecting me. I listened, but something had shifted. Their reasons didn't erase my reality. I said, you taught me how to survive, but you never taught me how to trust you. That broke her. My dad never came in, never apologized that night. The next morning, the house felt different. Lighter, heavier. My parents avoided eye contact, like kids who got caught. I packed a bag. Where are you going? My mom asked to stay with a friend. I said I need space. She nodded, didn't argue as I walked out. My dad finally spoke. We love you. I paused, turned back and said, I know, but love without honesty still hurts, and I left. Staying at my friend Jess's place felt weird at first, like I was crashing in someone else's life. She didn't ask questions, just handed me a spare key and said, make yourself at home. And that was more kindness than I'd felt in a long time. The first few nights I slept like a rock, no alarms, no tension, no pretending. But during the day, everything hit: texts from family, missed calls, messages asking what happened. I didn't reply right away. I needed quiet space, because when the noise fades, that's when the truth really sinks in. I thought exposing them would feel like victory. Like fireworks, like instant justice. It didn't. It felt like grief. Grief for the parents. I thought I had grief for the version of myself that believed them. Jess asked one night if I was okay. I said yeah, just recalibrating, and that's what it was. I had to recalibrate my whole life. My parents reached out, apologies, long messages, voice notes. My mom kept saying we're family. My dad said we made mistakes. Mistakes like forgetting milk. Not rewriting someone's reality. I didn't respond for days, not out of spite, out of clarity, because responding too soon would have meant comforting them, and I was done doing that when I finally replied. I kept it short. I need time. I'm not cutting you off. I just need space. They said they understood. I don't think they really did. Being away gave me perspective. I realized how much energy I spent shrinking, editing myself, minimizing needs. It was exhausting. I started thinking about my future, not theirs, mine. My job at the diner wasn't enough anymore. I applied to places I thought I wasn't good enough for. Turns out I was. I landed an entry-level position at a small firm. Nothing fancy, but stable. I moved out a month later. Tiny apartment, thin walls, but it was mine. My parents helped financially, offered. Suddenly, I said no, not to punish them, but to protect myself. I needed to know I could stand alone without strings. Family gatherings were awkward. People treated me differently, some with respect, some with pity. My parents were quieter, more careful. They lost something that night, control image, and I gained something, voice. Months passed. My mom tried harder therapy, honest conversations. My dad struggled, pride is heavy. We weren't healed, but we were real. One day my mom asked, "Do you forgive us?" I thought about it and said, "I'm learning to forgiveness isn't instant. It's a process, and so is trust." But here's the thing. Exposing the truth didn't destroy my family, the lie already did. I just turned the lights on. People think once the truth comes out, everything suddenly makes sense. Like all the pain lines up neatly, and you can just move on. That's not how it works. After the dust settled, after the whispers slowed, after the apologies stopped sounding urgent, that is when the real work started, because the lie didn't just mess with my bank account, it messed with my head. I caught myself flinching every time someone offered help, like there was a hidden cost, a future guilt bill waiting to show up. Jess noticed it before I did. She said, "You don't let anyone do anything nice for you." I laughed it off, said I was just independent, but late at night lying on a mattress that wasn't mine. I knew better. Independence was the story I told myself, so I wouldn't feel unwanted. I started replaying my childhood differently. Moments I once called normal suddenly felt sharp. The time I needed money for a school trip, and my mom sighed like I asked for her kidney. The way my dad would praise me for not asking for stuff. Good girl, low maintenance. I used to think that was love. Now I knew it was convenience, and that realization hurt in ways I didn't have language. For some days I woke up angry, like hot chest, tight angry. Other days I felt empty, like my emotions were buffering. Healing isn't linear, it's messy, it loops. I tried. Therapy sat across from a stranger and said my parents lied about money. She nodded like she'd heard it before. But when I said they watched me struggle and said nothing, her expression changed. That's when I understood. This wasn't just about finances. It was about neglect, dressed up as discipline. The therapist asked me, "What did that teach you about yourself?" I didn't answer right away because the truth was ugly. It taught me I wasn't worth investing in. Saying that out loud cracked something open. I cried harder in that office than I did the night I exposed them. Because anger protects you, sadness makes you feel, and feeling was terrifying. I had built my whole personality around not needing anyone around, proving I could survive without support. But survival isn't the same as living at work. I kept my head down, overperformed, said yes to everything my boss noticed, pulled me aside. "You don't have to prove yourself every day," she said. I smiled, said I knew, but I didn't, because proving myself was all I knew. My parents kept trying in awkward ways. My mom would send grocery gift cards, slip cash into cards. I sent them back, not because I didn't need help, but because I needed boundaries more. My dad avoided real conversations, talked about weather, sports. He didn't know how to face the damage, and honestly, neither did I. Family dinners were stiff, careful, like everyone was walking on glass. My grandma hugged me longer than usual, whispered, "I'm proud of you." And that one sentence from someone who never lied to me hit deeper than all the apologies combined. There were nights I questioned myself, wondered if I went too far. If I should have kept quiet, then I'd remember working a double shift while they were sipping wine somewhere warm, and the doubt would fade. I wasn't cruel, I was honest. Honesty just feels cruel to people who benefit from lies. Months passed, then a year. The anger softened. The sadness settled. I started trusting my instincts again. Started asking for help when I needed it, not from my parents, from friends, from chosen family. And you know what? Most people didn't hesitate, they didn't sigh, they didn't guilt me, they just showed up. That rewired something in me. My mom eventually admitted something one night when we were finally talking, like equals. She said, "We were scared you'd expect more." I looked at her and said I expected honesty, and that was the moment she really got it. My dad took longer. Pride is stubborn. But one day he said, "I didn't know how to be the dad you needed." It wasn't a full apology, but it was a start. I learned something important through all of this closure. Isn't it an event? It's a practice. You don't wake up healed. You wake up choosing not to bleed on yourself anymore. My relationship. With my parents never went back to what it was. And that's okay. Because what it was built on silence. Now it's built on truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable. And here's the thing. Nobody tells you revenge, it's always about punishment. Sometimes it's about reclaiming yourself, your voice, your worth. I didn't destroy my parents. I destroyed the version of myself that believed I deserved less and that changed everything. After a while, the story stopped being about them. And that's when I knew I was really changing for a long time. Everything I did was a reaction, every boundary, every decision, every no. It all traced back to that airport, that moment, that lie. But one morning I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about first class or bank statements or screenshots. In days I was thinking about me, what I wanted, what kind of life felt right, what kind of person I was when I wasn't trying to survive, and that question messed with me more than the betrayal ever did. Because when you grow up adapting, you don't really know who you are, you just know who you need to be. I started noticing how quiet my apartment felt. Not lonely, just open, no tension humming in the walls, no unspoken rules. I could buy the good cereal if I wanted. I could leave dishes overnight. I could say no to plans without explaining myself. Freedom sounds small when people talk about it, but when you've never had it, it's everything. I also noticed how my parents struggled with the new dynamic. My mom tried to be involved, asked about my job, my bills, my plans, but there was hesitation, like she was scared to cross a line. My dad barely asked anything at all. I think part of him was afraid to know the answers. One night my mom called and asked if I wanted to come over for dinner. Just us, no family. I almost said no, reflex. Then I paused, running forever. Isn't healing, it's avoidance. So I said yes. Their house looked the same. But it felt different. Less like a stage. More like a place. Dinner was awkward at first. Small talk, weather work. Then my mom asked, "Are you happy?" It wasn't loaded. It wasn't defensive. It was genuine. And that caught me off guard. I thought about it, really thought, and I said, "I'm learning how to be." That was the truth. Happiness felt too big to claim, yet my dad nodded, quiet. After dinner, my mom surprised me. She pulled out a folder, not dramatic, just calm. She said, "We started a fund for you, college future, whatever you want." My chest tightened. Not because of the money, but because of the timing. I asked why. Now, she said, "Because now we see you." That sentence wrecked me. Not in a bad way, just honest. I didn't take the money right away, but I didn't push it back either. Healing doesn't mean refusing repair. It means choosing it on your terms. Work started going better too. I stopped overworking, started trusting my pace. My boss gave me more responsibility, not because I begged, but because I was solid. I started mentoring a new girl fresh out of school. Same tired eyes I used to have. She apologized every 5 minutes for asking questions, for needing help. I told her, "You don't need to earn support," and the way she looked at me like nobody had ever said that before. Yeah, I knew that. Look outside my life. People still talked. Some said I was brave, some said I aired dirty laundry, but the noise didn't stick anymore, because once you stop living for approval, opinions lose their grip. I also noticed something wild. My parents started changing with other people too. They were more honest, less performative. They stopped pretending to struggle, stopped using money as a morality test. My mom told me once, "I didn't realize how much we hid behind that story. Lies grow. They spread the truth, shrinks things down to size." One day my dad asked if we could talk, just us. We sat in his car, engine off. He stared at the steering wheel for a long time. Then he said, "I thought providing meant control." I didn't respond. He continued, "I thought if you didn't need us, we were doing it right." His voice cracked just a little. I said I needed honesty more than strength. He nodded. That was the closest we'd ever been, and maybe that's all some parents can give late. Understanding. I also learned something else. Exposure has ripple effects. My cousin reached out, said my story made her question her own family dynamics. A friend admitted she stayed silent about stuff because she didn't want to seem ungrateful. Truth is contagious in the best way. Once one person speaks, others feel less crazy, and that felt powerful. Not revenge powerful, but grounding, like I wasn't just healing myself, I was making space for others to breathe. There were still hard days. Days I felt behind. Days I felt angry again. But they didn't own me anymore. I stopped measuring my worth by struggle. I stopped thinking pain was proof of growth. Peace became the goal and the wildest part. My parents stopped being the villains in my story, not because they were innocent, but because I stopped centering them. They became people, flawed, scared human, and I became something else entirely. Someone who tells the truth, even when her voice shakes. Time does this sneaky thing where it keeps moving even when you feel stuck, and one day you look back and realize you're not standing in the same place anymore. I didn't notice it at first because change didn't hit like a movie montage. It came quietly in small moments, like the first time I paid rent early, or the first time I said no without explaining myself, or the first time I laughed about something that used to make my chest tight. I remember standing in my kitchen one morning, coffee in hand, sunlight hitting the counter just right, and realizing I wasn't waiting for anything. I wasn't waiting for approval or apology or permission. I was just there living my life. And that realization felt heavier than anger ever did, because it meant I was responsible now. Not for fixing them, but for choosing myself. And that scared me more than the lie ever did. For a long time, I blamed my parents for everything. Every insecurity, every fear, every overthinking spiral. And yeah, they played their part, but healing meant taking my hands off that story and asking a harder question: who am I without the pain? Because pain had been my fuel for so long, it explained my grind, my distance, my edge. Letting it go felt like losing my armor. But armor gets heavy when you wear it too long. I started doing things just because I wanted to, not because they proved anything. I took a random weekend trip. Nothing fancy, just a cheap flight and a tiny Airbnb. And the wild part was booking it without guilt. No voice in my head saying that's irresponsible. No imaginary lecture about money. Just me choosing something good for myself. I sat on that balcony at night, city lights buzzing, and I thought about how many times my parents did this exact thing while telling me they couldn't. And instead of rage, I felt clarity. I wasn't angry anymore. I was determined to never confuse love with control, determined to never use struggle as a badge or a weapon, determined to never make someone earn honesty from me. That trip did something. To me, it cracked open a new version of confidence. Not loud, not flashy, just steady. When I came back, I noticed how differently I moved through the world. I made eye contact more, I spoke slower. I didn't rush to fill silence like I was afraid of taking up space. Even my voice changed. People commented on it, said I sounded sure, and I realized confidence isn't about being fearless. It's about trusting yourself enough to stand still. I still talked to my parents, but it was on new terms, shorter calls, clearer boundaries. No emotional labor disguised as family duty. My mom respected it more than I expected. My dad struggled, but he was trying, and that was enough for now. I stopped replaying the past in my head, stopped rewriting conversations, stopped wondering what I should have done differently, because the truth is, I did the best I could with what I knew at the time, and so did they. That doesn't erase harm, but it explains it, and understanding gave me peace. I started dating again, slowly, carefully, paying attention to how people handled honesty, how they responded to no, how they showed up when things weren't convenient. I walked away faster than before, not because I was guarded, but because I was clear. Clarity saves time and heartbreak. I also started talking about my story more. Not dumping it, not trauma bonding, just sharing it. Honestly, when it came up and something surprising happened, people listened. They really listened. Some opened up about their own stuff, family lies, financial control, emotional neglect. And I realized how common it was. How many people were carrying shame that didn't belong to them. And that made me feel less alone, and more responsible. Responsible to keep choosing truth, even when it was uncomfortable, even when silence would be easier. There was a moment one random afternoon, when my dad called and asked for advice about something small, work-related. He actually asked me what I thought, and waited for the answer. No lecture, no correction, no dismissing. And after we hung up, I just sat there, stunned, because that was new respect. It came late, but it came, and I took it without needing it to make up for the past, because nothing can. But it mattered. My mom and I started doing coffee once a month, just us. No big talks, just presence. And sometimes she'd catch herself before saying something controlling, and stop, apologize, and smile awkwardly. Growth is weird like that. It doesn't erase history, but it softens the edges. I learned that forgiveness isn't saying it didn't hurt, it's saying I won't let it own me anymore, and letting go wasn't dramatic, it was quiet. It was choosing not to bring the past into every room with me. It was choosing rest over resentment. One night I went through my old notebook, the one where I wrote down dates and lies and receipts. I read a few pages and felt like I was reading about someone else, a younger me, a braver me in some ways, because she spoke up when it counted. I closed the notebook and threw it away. Not out of anger, but out of gratitude. I didn't need proof anymore. I lived the truth now. My life wasn't perfect, not even close. But it was honest, and that was everything. I paid my bills. I built savings. I took trips. I rested. I laughed. I messed up. I apologized. I learned. I stopped shrinking. I stopped translating myself for people who didn't want to understand. And the craziest part was realizing that the revenge I thought I needed never looked like revenge at all. It looked like peace. It looked like walking through an airport years later, boarding my own flight economy seat, cheap bag, no shame, no secrets, just me knowing exactly how I got there and who I was becoming. And that felt better than first class ever. There's this moment that sneaks up on you when you're healing, where you realize you're not mad anymore. And that scares you because anger used to be the thing that kept you standing for a long time. I didn't notice it disappearing all at once. It faded in pieces like background noise. You don't realize it's gone until the room feels too quiet. I remember sitting on my couch one night, scrolling through my phone, and seeing a photo of my parents on a trip. They actually posted it this time. No fake broke story, no excuses, just a beach and two smiling faces. And instead of my chest tightening, I just nodded, like, yeah, that tracks, and kept scrolling. And that's when it hit me. The power was gone. Not theirs, mine. I wasn't reacting anymore. I wasn't measuring my growth against their mistakes, I was just living. And that felt weird, like walking without a limp you forgot you had. I started noticing how much lighter my days felt when I wasn't carrying old conversations around in my head. I stopped rehearsing what I'd say if they crossed a line again, because honestly, if they did, I'd just leave or hang up or say no, and that simplicity was new. I used to think boundaries had to be justified, explained, defended. But turns out they don't. They just exist, and the people who respect you learn them. The people who don't reveal themselves real quick. My parents mostly stayed in their lane. My mom slipped. Sometimes she'd ask questions that felt like checking in but smelled like control. And I gently shut it down, and she'd back off. No drama, no guilt trips, and that told me she was actually learning. My dad stayed quieter. He showed love in actions now. Not words, fixing things for me, helping me move. Asking if I ate enough, awkward but sincere. And I let him show up how he could instead of demanding. He show up how I wanted. Because that expectation only led to disappointment, and I was done feeding that cycle. I also started noticing how my story shifted, depending on who heard it. Some people wanted a villain, some wanted a hero, some wanted a lesson. I stopped trying to give them any of that. I told it straight, no edits, no performance, because real life isn't clean, and that honesty felt grounding, like standing barefoot on concrete solid. Not soft, but real. One night Jess asked me if I regretted exposing them, and I thought about it longer than I expected, because regret is tricky. It shows up wearing different faces. Regret isn't always about doing the wrong thing. Sometimes it's about wishing you didn't have to do the right one. I told her no, but I wish it hadn't been necessary, and that was the truth. If I could have had honesty without pain, I would have taken it in a heartbeat, but life doesn't always offer gentle options. Sometimes it hands you a match and asks what you're gonna do with it. I chose light instead of fire, and that mattered. I started mentoring more at work, helping new hires, finding my voice in meetings, not loud, just steady. And people listened when I spoke, because I wasn't speaking from fear anymore. I was speaking from clarity. Clarity is magnetic. People trust it even when they don't understand it. I got promoted, nothing huge but meaningful. And my parents congratulated me without making it about themselves. and I appreciated that progress doesn't erase the past, but it changes the future. And that's what counts. There were moments, though quiet ones, where grief crept back, not for money, not for trips, but for the version of me that learned to disappear to survive. I grieved her, I honored her, and then I let her rest because she did her job. She got me here and I didn't need her armor anymore. I started dreaming differently too. Not big, flashy dreams, just grounded ones. A home that felt safe, relationships that felt mutual. A life that didn't require me to perform strength every single day. And those dreams felt reachable because I wasn't fighting myself anymore. The biggest shift came when I realized I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. Not to my parents. Not to the world. Not even to myself. Proving is exhausting. Being is enough. One afternoon, I found myself back at an airport, not the same one, but close enough that it stirred something. I watched families rushing, couples laughing, kids whining, the usual chaos, and I felt calm, not triggered, not curious, just present. I boarded my flight, found my seat, middle row. Nothing fancy, and smiled, because I knew exactly where my money went, how I earned it, and why I deserved to be there. No lies, no shame, no pretending, just truth. And that was freedom. I sent my mom a photo of the wing. Not as a flex, just as a check-in. She replied, "Have a good flight with a heart." And for once it felt uncomplicated. And that's when I knew I'd crossed some invisible line, not into forgiveness, not into forgetting, but into acceptance. Acceptance of what was, what is, and what will never be. And acceptance isn't passive. It's powerful. It frees you to move forward without dragging the past behind you like a weight tied to your ankle. I still believe in accountability. I still believe in speaking up, but I also believe in choosing peace when the lesson has been learned and the message delivered. And that balance, that's the real growth, because revenge fades, but self-respect stays. And I chose myself over and over until it became natural, until it became my default, and that changed everything. There's a strange kind of quiet that shows up once you stop fighting your own story. Not silence, not emptiness, just stillness. It took me a while to trust it. For so long, chaos felt normal, tension felt productive. Like if I wasn't stressed or alert or bracing for disappointment, then something had to be wrong. Peace felt suspicious. I remember sitting on my couch one Sunday afternoon, nothing on TV, no plans for the day. Just sunlight coming through the window, and the sound of the city outside. And my first instinct was to reach for my phone. Scroll, distract, fill the space. Because empty space used to mean danger, but nothing happened. No bad news. No guilt, no crisis, just me breathing. And that's when it hit me. This is what safety feels like. Not excitement. Not escape safety. That realization shook me harder than the betrayal ever did because it made me understand how long I'd lived without it. I started paying attention to my body in ways I never had before, how my shoulders weren't always up by my ears, how my jaw wasn't clenched, how my stomach didn't twist every time my phone buzzed. My nervous system was finally catching up to my reality. I wasn't in survival mode anymore, and that changed everything. I stopped over-explaining myself, stopped apologizing for existing, stopped offering reasons for my boundaries like they were negotiable. I learned to say no and then stopped talking. At first it felt rude, then it felt powerful, then it just felt normal. My parents noticed. My mom mentioned once that I seemed different, more grounded. I told her I finally feel like my life belongs to me. She nodded like she understood, or maybe like she was still learning. Either way, she didn't argue. My dad surprised me one afternoon by saying, "You're stronger than I ever was at your age," and I almost corrected him. Almost said no, I just had to be. But I didn't. Because sometimes letting people see your strength without explaining the pain behind it is part of healing too. I realized I didn't need them to fully understand my experience for it to be valid. That was huge. Validation stopped being something I chased from the outside. I gave it to myself. I trusted my memory, my feelings, my version of events. I stopped doubting my instincts. And once you trust yourself, you become very hard to manipulate. Relationships shifted. Some friendships faded, the ones built on shared struggle or mutual complaining. Others deepened, the ones built on honesty and growth. I wasn't offended by the loss anymore. Not everything is meant to come with you. I also stopped romanticizing resilience. People love to praise strength, but strength built on neglect isn't a compliment. It's a consequence. I let myself rest, really rest, took days off without guilt. Spent money on comfort, not just necessity, slept late when I needed to. I stopped treating exhaustion like a badge. There was a moment at work when a project went sideways. Old me would have panicked, overcorrected, taken blame. That wasn't mine. This time I calmly said, here's what happened, here's what we can fix, and here's what wasn't in my control. And nobody pushed back because confidence changes the room. Later, my boss pulled me aside and said, you handled that well. I smiled because I knew I did. I didn't need it to land like revenge. I didn't need anyone to be humbled or embarrassed. My win was internal. I thought about the younger version of me, the one counting tips at the diner, the one believing struggle was just her destiny. And I wished I could sit across from her and say, you're not weak, you're just unsupported, and that's not your fault. But I also knew she wouldn't believe me yet. She had to live it, survive it, wake up, and she did. I did my parents. And I found a rhythm, not perfect, but honest. We didn't pretend the past didn't exist. We just stopped letting it dominate every interaction. My mom once admitted she admired how I handled everything, how I didn't explode, how I didn't disappear. I told her I almost did both, and we shared a quiet laugh, the kind that acknowledges pain without reopening. I stopped needing apologies because I finally understood something. Apologies don't heal. Changed behavior does, and I saw that change slow, uneven, but real, not because I demanded it, but because exposure forced reflection, and reflection forced growth. That's the part people miss. Telling the truth isn't about punishment, it's about accountability, and accountability gives people a chance to become better. They don't always take it, but my parents did. Eventually, I learned how to hold complexity, how to love people who hurt me without letting them hurt me again. That balance is maturity, not bitterness. There were still days I felt sad, not angry, just sad. Sad for lost time, lost softness, lost trust. But sadness didn't scare me anymore. It passed like weather because I knew who I was now. I was someone who chose honesty, who spoke when silence would have been easier, who rebuilt herself without burning everything down. And that mattered. I didn't need to prove I was right anymore. I knew I was. And the quiet confidence that comes with that, that's something no one can take from you. By the time the second year rolled around, everything felt steadier, not perfect, but grounded. Like my feet were finally on solid ground instead of loose gravel. I wasn't bracing myself every morning anymore. I wasn't scanning rooms for tension or reading between lines looking for what people really meant. I took words at face value and trusted myself enough to walk away when something didn't sit right. That kind of trust is rare when you've grown up second-guessing your reality. But once it clicks, it sticks. I noticed it most in small moments, like when my mom would say something slightly guilt-heavy and I'd pause, breathe, and respond calmly instead of shrinking or snapping, and she'd correct herself right there. Sometimes even apologize that would have felt impossible before, but growth has a way of sneaking up on people when the mirror won't go away. One afternoon, she admitted something that changed the way I saw her forever. She said, I thought money was the only way I could feel safe, and I didn't realize how unsafe I was making you. That wasn't an excuse. It wasn't wrapped in justification, it was just truth, and I respected it more than any long speech she could have. Given my dad came around in his own way. Slower, quieter. He started asking real questions, not about my plans, but about how I felt. And when I answered, he listened without interrupting, without correcting, without turning it into a lesson that meant more to me than he'll ever know, because for the first time, I wasn't his project, I was his daughter. I also started forgiving myself, which might have been the hardest part. I forgave myself for not noticing, sooner for believing them, for internalizing scarcity, like it was my identity. I stopped calling myself naive, and started calling myself hopeful, because that's what it really was, and hope isn't weakness, it's risk. There were moments when I ran into people from my past, coworkers, classmates, distant family, and they'd ask how things were with my parents, their tone careful, curious. I just say we're better now and mean it, not because everything was fixed, but because nothing was fake anymore. I learned that peace doesn't mean no conflict, it means no pretending. I started planning long-term things, not in panic mode, not with a backup plan for my backup plan, just simple things, like saving for a place with more light. Thinking about going back to school, considering what I actually liked instead of what felt safe. Scarcity makes your world small, abundance expands it. One night I was sorting through old photos on my phone and found screenshots from the airport, the first-class seats, the confirmation emails, the evidence I'd clung to so tightly for so long. I looked at them without emotion, no anger, no sadness, just distance. And then I deleted them all, not dramatically, just one by one, because I didn't need them anymore. My truth didn't require proof that night. I slept better than I had in years. I realized something else too. The story wasn't really about money at all. Money was just the language the lie used. But the real betrayal was being underestimated. Being managed instead of trusted, being raised to survive instead of supported to grow. And once I saw that, I stopped tying my worth to finances or independence, or how much I could handle alone. I let myself need people, not in a desperate way, in a human way. I leaned on friends when work got heavy, asked for help without apologizing, accepted care without feeling like I owed something back. That shift rewired me. My parents noticed the difference, but they didn't comment much. Maybe because they finally understood that my growth didn't need their approval. We had a conversation one evening, sitting on their porch, summer air, thick cicadas, loud. My mom asked if I ever wished things had been different, and I answered, honestly, yes and no. Yes, because it would have been easier. No, because it made me who I am, and I like who I am now. She nodded, tears in her eyes, and said, I do too. That was it. No drama, no big reconciliation scene, just two adults acknowledging reality. I stopped thinking of my story as revenge or exposure or even healing. It became integration, taking the broken pieces and deciding which ones to keep, which ones to learn from, and which ones to leave behind. I didn't owe anyone forgiveness. I chose it, and I didn't do it for them. I did it for me, because carrying resentment felt heavier than carrying truth. My life kept moving forward. Jobs changed, friendships evolved, seasons passed, and every now and then I'd catch myself smiling at something ordinary and realize that ordinary used to feel impossible. Safety used to feel impossible. And that's when I understood the real ending. It wasn't when I exposed them. It wasn't when they apologized. It wasn't when I moved out or got promoted. It was when I stopped measuring my life against the lie and started building it on honesty. That's when everything finally settled into place. There's a moment that comes later than you expect, when you realize the story doesn't hurt to tell anymore. It doesn't tighten your chest or make your voice shake. It just exists like a scar. You know exactly how you got, but don't need to hide. I noticed it the first time someone joked about growing up broke, and I didn't flinch, didn't rush to explain, didn't feel the need to separate myself from it. I just listened and smiled, because my story wasn't a cage anymore. It was context. I started thinking about legacy, not in a dramatic way, just in a quiet, practical sense. What patterns stop with me? What habits die here? What truths get passed forward instead of buried? I didn't want to be defined by what was taken from me. I wanted to be known for what I chose to build after my parents were part of my life now, but not the center of it. And that balance felt healthy. They showed up when invited, respected my space, asked instead of assumed, and I noticed how different they were with other people too. More honest, less performative. Like they finally realized how exhausting pretending really was. I don't think they would have changed without being confronted. And I don't think I would have survived without confronting them. That truth used to scare me, now it just feels factual. One afternoon, my mom told me she'd started talking differently with her friends about money. No more humble brag, no more fake struggle, just honesty. She said it felt lighter, like she didn't have to keep track of the story anymore. And I thought about how lies always demand maintenance, while truth just sits there solid. I caught myself laughing more, real laughter, the kind that starts in your stomach, not the polite kind. I laughed at work, at home, alone, at stupid videos on my phone. Joy didn't feel like something I had to earn anymore. It felt allowed. I also stopped chasing closure from conversations that were never going to happen. Some questions don't get answered. Some apologies don't come the way you want them to, and waiting for that keeps you stuck. I let go of needing every loose end tied and focused on the life in front of me. There were still moments of sadness, like when I thought about how young I had to grow up or how much softer I could have been with support, but I didn't let those thoughts turn into bitterness. They were acknowledgments, not anchors. I realized something important along the way. People who benefit from your silence will always be uncomfortable with your voice. That doesn't make your voice wrong. It makes it necessary. And once I understood that, I stopped shrinking myself to keep other people comfortable. My parents never fully said we were wrong, but they didn't need to. Their behavior said enough. They listened more. They explained less. They didn't center themselves in my achievements or my pain, and that respect mattered. I started mentoring again, this time outside of work. Volunteering, talking to younger women about finances, boundaries, self-trust. I didn't tell them what to do. I just told them the truth, that honesty is worth. The discomfort and silence cost more than you think. And watching their faces when it clicked reminded me why speaking up mattered beyond my own story. One night I sat on my balcony, city humming below, and thought about the airport again, not with anger, not with shock, just awareness of how one moment can fracture your life, and also redirect it if you let it. I realized that version of me standing there watching first class bored didn't know she was about to wake up. She thought she was losing something. But she was actually gaining clarity, and clarity is priceless. I didn't need revenge anymore because I had peace, and peace doesn't shout, it doesn't prove, it just exists. Steady, unbothered, grounded, and that's the kind of ending I never imagined but wouldn't trade for anything. By this point, the anger was a memory, not a resident. It showed up sometimes, sure, but it didn't unpack its bags and stay the way it used to. I could feel it pass through like a wave instead of a storm. And that told me I was finally on the other side of something real. I started trusting the quiet in my life. Not mistaking it for emptiness or boredom, but recognizing it as peace. Peace that didn't need a soundtrack or an audience. Peace that didn't come with conditions attached. My routines became sacred in a way I never expected. Morning coffee with no rush, walks with headphones in, just letting music hit. Instead of thinking about what came next, nights where I cooked something simple and ate it slowly, sitting down, actually tasting it, like my body finally believed there was enough time, enough safety, enough. I noticed how my parents fit into this new rhythm differently. They weren't the background noise of my life anymore. They were guests, sometimes welcome, sometimes not, depending on the day. And that choice was mine. My mom and I had a long talk one evening. Not emotional, not confrontational, just honest. She admitted she didn't know how to be a parent without control, that letting go felt like free falling. And I told her raising me like I was fragile made me feel invisible. We didn't argue, we didn't defend. We just listened. And that conversation felt like something closing gently, instead of slamming shut. My dad surprised me again. Weeks later, when he asked me how I handled money now, not in a judgmental way, but in a curious one, I explained my system: budget, savings, emergency fund, the basics, and he listened like a student, not an authority, and something about that healed a part of me I didn't know was still sore. I also stopped explaining my past to people who weren't entitled to it. That was new. Before I'd overshare to get understanding. Now I shared when it felt right, not to justify myself, but to connect. I realized how much of my life used to be about proving I was enough, proving I deserved. Space, love, support. And once that pressure lifted, everything softened: my body, my voice, my expectations. There was a moment at a family gathering when someone joked about how independent I was, and I felt that old urge to laugh it off or explain. But instead I said, yeah, I had to be, and left it there, no spin, no defense. And the room went quiet for a second before moving on. and that silence felt powerful. I didn't need to protect anyone anymore. Not myself, not them, not the story. My parents didn't flinch, they didn't correct, they didn't minimize, and that told me everything I needed to know. I also thought a lot about the idea of fairness, how unfair it felt to carry so much so young, how unfair it was that they got comfort while I got lessons. But then I realized fairness isn't something life hands you. It's something you build over time, with boundaries and choices and honesty. I built mine slowly, brick by brick. I chose rest, I chose truth. I chose myself even when it felt selfish, especially when it felt selfish. There were days I still mourned the childhood I didn't get, but those days were quieter, less sharp. Like grief had learned how to sit beside me instead of on top of me. I stopped waiting for a final apology, a perfect sentence that would make it all make sense because I understood something important. Closure doesn't come from other people saying the right thing. It comes from you deciding you're done waiting. I watched my parents adjust to that reality, sometimes awkward, sometimes clumsy, but trying, and I accepted that they were learning too, just later than I needed. One afternoon, my mom asked if I ever thought about having kids someday, and the question hit me deeper than she knew, because all I could think about was what I would do differently, how I would tell the truth, even when it was uncomfortable, how I would never make love conditional on silence or obedience. I told her I didn't know, but I knew one thing: honesty would always come first, and she nodded like she understood the weight of that promise. I started seeing my story, not as something that happened to me, but as something that shaped me in ways I could now choose how to use. I could let it harden me or deepen me, and I chose depth. Depth means empathy without self-sacrifice, strength without armor, clarity without cruelty. I felt proud of myself in a way that had nothing to do with achievements or approval. I was proud because I faced something that could have swallowed me, and instead I used it to wake up. And that pride felt clean, not loud, not flashy, just steady. The airport stopped haunting me. Eventually it became just another place. Another moment frozen in time, and when I thought about it now, I saw it clearly, not as the day I lost trust, but as the day I stopped being asleep. That girl standing there watching first class bored didn't know she was about to step into her own life. She thought she was being left behind, but she was actually being set free from a story that was never hers to carry. And as I stood in my present life, surrounded by routines and relationships built on truth, I felt something settle deep in my chest, a sense of arrival, not to a destination, but to myself. There's a kind of peace that doesn't feel exciting. When it first shows up, it feels quiet, almost boring. And if you grew up in chaos, that quiet can feel wrong. I remember the first time I really noticed it. I was walking home after work, same route I'd taken 100 times, headphones in city buzzing around me, and nothing in my chest was tight. Nothing in my head was racing. I wasn't replaying conversations, wasn't preparing for the next problem, wasn't bracing. I was just walking, and that's when it hit me. This is what it feels like, when your life is finally yours. Not perfect, not shiny, just honest. For so long I thought healing would feel like some big dramatic finish, like closure wrapped in a bow, like forgiveness or revenge, or some moment where everything suddenly made sense. But healing didn't announce itself. It settled in quietly, day by day, choice by choice. It showed up when I stopped explaining my boundaries, when I stopped apologizing for taking up space, when I stopped confusing guilt with love. It showed up when I realized I wasn't scared of my parents anymore, not scared of disappointing them, not scared of upsetting the balance, not scared of being honest. They didn't hold that power now. And the wild part, they felt it too. Our relationship became simpler, not deeper in a movie way, but cleaner. Conversations had less tension, less performance, less pretending. My mom laughed more, not nervous laughter, real laughter. My dad listened more, not waiting to respond, actually listening, and I stopped expecting them to fix what was broken, because I already had. There was a moment at a family dinner, months after everything settled, where we were all sitting at the table talking about nothing important. and I caught myself watching them, not critically, not defensively, just observing two people who did what they knew, who made choices rooted in fear, who thought control meant protection. And I felt compassion, not the kind that erases accountability, but the kind that understands without excusing. That's when I knew I was free. Because resentment needs proximity, it needs attention, it needs energy, and I wasn't feeding it anymore. I had built a life that didn't revolve around reacting to old wounds. My mornings were slower, my nights were calmer. I had routines, habits, plans, not survival plans. Real ones. I saved money without fear, spent it without shame. I traveled when I wanted, rested when I needed, and every choice felt grounded, not rebellious, not defiant, just mine. Sometimes I thought about the airport again, not often, but when I did, it felt distant, like remembering the start of a story. You barely recognize yourself in that girl standing there, heart racing, watching her parents disappear into first class. She thought she was being abandoned. She didn't know she was being introduced to the truth. And truth is brutal, but it's also clean lies, rot quietly. Truth hurts loudly, then heals slowly. I learned that the hard way. I also learned something. Nobody tells you standing up for yourself doesn't just change your life. It changes the way people around you see themselves. My parents were different now, not perfect, but honest. They didn't hide behind stories, didn't play the role of struggling saints. They owned their comfort, and more importantly, they owned their mistakes. And I didn't need them to suffer for it, I needed them to see it. And they did. People sometimes ask me if I regretted exposing them, if I thought it was worth it. And I always pause before answering because regret assumes there was a better option. Silence would have cost me my voice, my self-respect, my sanity. Truth cost me comfort. But it gave me clarity, and clarity is something you can build a life on. I stopped calling what I did revenge because revenge is about harm. What I did was self-rescue. I pulled myself out of a story that was shrinking me. I stopped being the kid who was supposed to understand, supposed to be grateful, supposed to stay quiet, and became an adult who demanded honesty even when it shook the room. Especially when it shook the room, the biggest change wasn't in my parents or my finances or my job. It was in how I talked to myself. I stopped calling myself dramatic, stopped minimizing my pain, stopped gaslighting my own memory. I trusted myself, and once you do that, once you really trust yourself, no one can lie to you the same way. Again, that's power, real power, quiet power. The kind that doesn't need an audience. There were still hard days. Days where old thoughts tried to creep back, and days where I wondered if things could have been easier, softer. But I didn't live there anymore. I learned how to let thoughts pass without turning them into homes. And one day, without even realizing it, I stopped needing the story to explain who I was. It became something I carried, not something I lived inside. I could tell it or not tell it. Either way, I was whole. That's the ending. Nobody talks about not forgiveness, not revenge, integration, taking what happened, learning from it, and refusing to let it define your future. I didn't become cold. I didn't become bitter. I became clear about what I deserve, clear about what I won't tolerate, clear about the kind of life I'm willing to build. And that clarity shaped everything: my relationships, my work, my peace. Even my parents benefited from it, because honesty doesn't just free the person who speaks. It forces everyone else to stop hiding, and hiding is exhausting. The final truth. The one that surprised me the most was that my parents didn't ruin my trust forever. They taught me how important it is, and that lesson, as painful as it was, gave me something priceless. A life built on truth, not appearance, not fear, not silence, just truth. And every time I walk through an airport now, hear boarding calls, watch people rush past, I smile a little because I know where I'm going, I know how I got there, and I know who I am.